Welcome aboard, folks. I'm Stephen Malkowicz, your captain on this adventure called Ship of Fools. It's a fabulous mess, and you're invited. Kyla Lee, welcome aboard the Ship of Fools.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I think I've always been on a ship of fools.
I appreciate you coming out and having a chat with us here. Kyla, you are a lawyer.
Yep.
And you specialize in an area that people don't tend to discuss it much in public. Mm-hmm. And I'm not admitting to nothing here. Okay. But I have been involved in the course of my life. I grew up in Manitoba, moved out here, and roadblocks, everything. Mm-hmm. And it's a topic that everybody's against drinking and driving.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's just be straight here. Okay. But we do have a thing called the law, right? And there's not really an understanding of what, and I bring these things up because your area of expertise crosses a gambit of things. Like there's alcohol, there's cannabis, there's prescription medication, there's all kinds of impairments. There's driving without your glasses on, right?
You can be fatigued, and that's probably about as impairing as alcohol or drugs, depending on the level of fatigue. Yep.
So I want to start off with, I guess, a brief introduction. You don't have to get all biographical on us here, but tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up in the position that you are.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an impaired driving lawyer, basically a drunk driving lawyer, and I ended up just kind of by accident in this area. I applied for a job in law school, working at a firm that did primarily impaired driving. And then in British Columbia in 2010, our law changed and we kind of decriminalized drunk driving in a way.
I didn't know that.
And yeah. And so there were a large group of lawyers that did criminal impaired driving cases, and they kind of all got out of the business because there were going to be significant reductions in the number of criminal cases. And our firm pivoted to dealing with these administrative license suspensions we get for DUI now. And now there's, my practice is like half criminal impaired driving cases, and then traffic tickets and anything wrong you can do in your car.
So explain kind of decriminalized it, because and I'm not admitting to nothing here. But it was criminal. It was a federal. Wasn't it a federal crime?
Yeah, I mean, it continues to be.
Okay.
So in British Columbia, we created something called an immediate roadside prohibition. It's a 90-day license suspension, happens on the spot immediately. They take your car for 30 days. There's fines and remedial programs after. And that's solely on the basis of failing a roadside breathalyzer test. It used to be in BC that if you failed the roadside breathalyzer, you'd be arrested, taken back to the police station, made to sit around for a couple hours, provide some breath samples, and then released with a criminal charge. But they wanted to divert those cases out of the courts because they were causing a lot of delay and backlogs. There wasn't a great success rate on prosecuting them because the defense lawyers were well-resourced and creative. And it was a big drain on police resources too, right? To take an impaired driver off the road would be one, sometimes two officers not doing any other enforcement for 2-3 hours. So by creating this administrative system, they can get people, they can do 10, 15 of them in a shift if they were really enterprising.
Okay. I did not know that.
Yeah.
I did not know that. So talk about, we'll get into when you're stopped at a roadblock, mm-hmm. Okay. And I don't know, what are your rights? Like, I didn't think you had any.
You do have some rights. So obviously you do have to stop if you're signaled to do so by a police officer, but you also have the right to avoid the roadblock. So if you spot it ahead in the roadway and there is a safe and lawful way for you to take a different route, you're entitled to do that. So that's your right number one. You don't have to answer any questions except for name, address, and name and address of the registered owner of the vehicle. Those you're required to answer under the Motor Vehicle Act. But if the officer asks you, where are you coming from? Where are you headed to? Have you had anything to drink tonight? You know, the three questions you expect at a roadblock, you can remain silent. You're not obligated to answer them. And then when it comes to the breath test, you are legally obligated to comply with that. So you do not have the right to refuse the test.
Okay. So I understand that, but if you refuse the test, don't you get charged?
Yes. Well, or you could get one of those immediate roadside prohibitions.
Okay.
Yeah, but you could be there. It's a criminal offense to refuse to provide a sample into a roadside breathalyzer if you're demanded, or to perform like field sobriety tests or saliva tests.
So we're talking just about alcohol here.
Yes. Yeah. So for alcohol, they can do the roadside breathalyzer, and they don't even need, as of December 2018, grounds to ask you to blow. So they can pull you over at the roadblock and shove a device in your face and say, you've got to comply with my demand, and you've got to do it, even if they don't think you've been drinking.
And you can't say no.
You cannot say no.
Okay. How do they test for cannabis impairment? Like how and I'm not admitting to nothing here. Once again. Okay? Look in the camera. I'm not admitting to nothing.
To test for cannabis impairment, there's a couple different ways they can do it. So we do have saliva testing. Basically, you rub a little saliva testing device inside your mouth for a couple minutes. It'll absorb your saliva, and then it measures a THC concentration in your saliva and then correlates that to what your THC concentration is in your bloodstream. That's very, very rarely used. It's clunky. Police don't like sticking their hands in people's faces, especially if they think they've been on drugs, because that's not super safe. Also, spit, gross.
Yeah.
So what they mostly do here in BC is they do what's known as the standardized field sobriety tests. Those are the ones you've probably seen on TV, you know, walking the line, standing on one leg.
Whatever.
Yeah. So they'll do those. And if the person performs poorly on those tests, then they can be arrested for being impaired at that point.
Does that happen?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not common. They promised when they changed the law after cannabis legalization that they were going to get every officer trained on how to do these tests. They never did. They didn't put the money into that. And so a lot of officers don't know how to do them. There's delays that are occasioned when they have to get another officer to come perform the tests, and those delays can be problems for the admissibility of evidence. So they generally don't do it. They just give you a 24-hour prohibition.
Is it legal to drive and smoke a joint?
No, it is not legal to possess any cannabis in your vehicle that is not in the sealed Health Canada packaging, unless it is in like opened packaging, but out of reach of the driver and any passengers in the vehicle.
I apologize for some of my questions being silly, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I really have no idea. Because I swear to God, when I'm driving down Highway 99 in rush hour traffic, there's people that are smoking up.
Well, and
I don't know.
With vapes now, there's no way to know, right? Like, what's in your vape? Is it a THC vape or is it a tobacco vape? We don't know.
Yeah. So, or have you taken an edible? You know, I don't. Yeah, I don't understand. I don't get that. I don't understand that. But there must is. In your practice, it seems to me that the message has gotten out there, at least in my lifetime, I can look at it, that drunk driving is a bad thing.
Yes.
Right? Just like smoking is bad too.
Yep.
Right?
Smoking's bad, vaping's bad. That message
that's right.
Not getting out there yet.
Yeah, it's we know that thing. And I jokingly say this, and I apologize for saying it, but when I grew up, it was like I grew up in an era where my father was not a drunk by no stretch, but if he had a couple of drinks, my mother, if she tried to wrestle the car keys from him, no, you know, and I don't want to say it was socially acceptable, but
there was a time when, you know, if you got pulled over and you'd had a couple drinks and you were close to home, police officers would say, I'll follow you home to make sure you get there safely. You know, that doesn't happen now. We have had a big shift societally. And even in the time that I've been practicing, I've been doing this for 13 years now. In the time that I've been doing 13, 14, 14 years. A big shift in how people view impaired driving. Like the rates of drinking and driving among like the Gen Z people are so low compared to what they would have been among like my generation, the millennials or Gen X or anything like that. So it is going down. Although, I think a lot of the shifting attitude is also grounded in the availability of other alternatives, right? Mm-hmm. When I was going to the clubs and having fun time, you couldn't get an Uber, right? You'd have to, if you were somewhere where you could take a taxi, you'd have to wait forever for a taxi to drive by on the street. Now you can,
accessible.
It's accessible. So you don't have the same excuses you did. Mm-hmm. It's less easy to sort of justify it among your friend group because you just, at this day and age, you're just being silly that you didn't take an Uber.
Yeah, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a real good thing. It's a real good thing. But you still have impaired charges.
Yes.
They're never going to go away.
No.
It's just, it's the way it is. And I think probably I would suggest that, impaired driving it's in my mind, it's not just, it's texting too. Like, and I can speak specifically to, my wife just got rear-ended, I don't know, 2 months ago or whatever at a I think it was at a red light. The girl was texting.
Oh, of course.
And you can't help. We're all guilty of it to a certain extent. I won't admit, I'm not admitting to nothing, but
me neither.
And I always wonder, because I take Highway 99 in, past the tunnel on the north side, and as you get to the Oak Street Bridge, when it's police day, they'll have 5 cars there, and I don't know if they're pulling people over because they don't have a seatbelt on, or because they are in the HOV lane too long, or I don't know what they're doing.
It's probably all of the above. HOV lane, seatbelt, distracted driving.
It's a mess there too.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. It's not on. That's why I just stay in the left-hand lane. I don't move.
Yeah. Because
you don't know where you can get off at a certain point to get off to the area. It's ridiculous. It's the same, and sometimes it's on the other side of the tunnel too. You got like 6 lanes going into 2, and it's ridiculous. But do people still get charged for driving without a seatbelt?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't defend a lot of those because there's no points for seatbelt tickets. So most people don't want to pay a lawyer for something that doesn't have points. But yeah, there's still a lot of seatbelt tickets issued. There's dedicated seatbelt enforcement operations that still get set up. There is a lot that goes into prosecuting seatbelt tickets, surprisingly.
And I won't admit, but this is a personal story that happened a few years ago, coming over the Queensboro Bridge, and I was going to New Westminster, and I literally was looking in the council for breath mints, and there happened to be an RCMP officer there, and I almost hit him going on to Stewartson Way.
Distracted driving.
Yeah, I almost hit him. And where he was, and I started arguing with him as soon as he approached the car. I said, "Do you want to die? Like, why are you standing right there?" I literally, you jumped out, and he goes, "You were texting." I said, "Find my phone. It's not even here. It was breath mints." And he says, "No," and he wrote up the ticket. And at that moment, I said, "No, I'll see you in court, buddy. You better show up. You better show up." Did he? Yes.
What happened?
We went to traffic court in New Westminster. That had been my first time I'd ever done that. And I will say I was the only white guy there. He was there, and he caught me at the door, and he said, "Come here, I want to talk to you." And I said, "Well, what?" I'm here to defend myself. I'm saying I have breath mints. He goes, "Look, we're going to be the first guys in there, and you won't admit to nothing, but you're going to pay a fine." Okay. I said, well, "What do you mean?" He goes, "And this will go away."
Okay. He probably amended the ticket from driver to owner.
So I still don't know what would happen. I got it to the front, and all I know, there was a bunch of dump truck drivers behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And we got up, and he also said, say you have no money. And
You'll get a fine reduction.
that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And it literally took, I'm going to say, a minute and a half. It was done. And we walked downstairs, and I paid $100,
Mm-hmm.
and it went away.
Oh, well, worked out.
But I still don't understand what happened there.
Yeah, I mean, based on what you said, he probably amended the ticket from driver to owner, because if you're prosecuted as the owner, you're just saying, the car did this thing. I didn't do it. The car did it, effectively. And it doesn't go in your driving record, and you don't get points, but you still pay the fine. So the Motor Vehicle Act makes you responsible as the owner of a vehicle for anything done with the vehicle.
Okay. See, this happened a number of years ago. I never had a clue what had happened. And I'm better now, but I used to have a very bad attitude when I'd be pulled over for something that I thought was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And evidently they never thought it was ridiculous. I've had my own police escort to the airport at Leduc from Drayton Valley, caught speeding with my son, trying to catch a flight.
Yeah, of course.
And had my own escort going from municipality to municipality. That was beautiful. My son remembers that. He's like, Dad, you're a hero. Like, you really showed them, didn't you? And then I tried to play the game, going to court, and then finally I just gave up and paid the ticket and whatever. But let's talk. We talked about and the testing, I would imagine, for prescription medication, all that kind of stuff. That's basically okay. You seem to be impaired, or like how are they?
So there's actually it's called the drug recognition evaluation, and it's a 12-step process, and 12 is on purpose. It's not accidental, because they use it mostly in the United States, where they have juries, and they want juries to hear 12 steps and think addiction. But they do a series of combination of physical coordination and medical tests. They're going to check your pupil size, blood pressure, temperature. They grab you and sort of squeeze you to check your muscle tone. They'll make you stand on one leg, touch your nose. They'll put you in a dark room and look at your pupil reactivity to light.
They actually do all this stuff?
They do all of those things. They go through a whole battery of tests. And then at the end, the person who's trained to do these is supposed to, on the basis of those tests, be able to form an opinion. Number one, whether or not you're impaired in your ability to drive. Number two, whether your impairment is caused by a medical condition or a drug. And number three, the class or category of drugs that is the cause of the impairment. And they have 7 sort of categories, like depressants and stimulants and hallucinogens, et cetera.
So do we have that law here?
Yeah, we do. And in fact, in our legal system, we actually use it worse than they do in the United States. In Canada, if they do all those tests and the evaluator comes to the conclusion you're impaired by cannabis, and then they take a urine sample from you, which they do afterwards, and the urine comes back positive for cannabis, our law says you're presumed to be impaired and impaired by cannabis at the time that you were driving.
Doesn't cannabis stay in your system for a while?
It does, yes.
So that would become problematic.
It is problematic, but the courts have thus far upheld it as constitutional. Basically, they'll say, yeah, there's a possibility that innocent people might be convicted, but we want to remove drunk driving from the road and impaired driving from the road, and this is the tool that we have to detect for drug impaired driving right now. So good enough for government, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that. So if you're a casual consumer of cannabis and you get pulled over at a roadblock, you could be.
You could be.
Have you had to defend? Have you ever?
Oh yeah, lots of them. Yeah, all the time. You could be over. If you're a casual consumer, you're probably not likely to have stored THC that's still in your system from using it days earlier, because that typically comes with the chronic users or the medical users. Mm-hmm. Because what happens is it stores in your fat cells. And then as your fat cells break down, it gets re-released into your bloodstream. So that's why they've even done studies where they've found like an elevated above what the legal limit would be THC concentration in people who've been non-cannabis users for over 30 days, but had been heavy users before.
So, so you said that you've had these cases. Mm-hmm. Do you win?
Yes.
I'm just asking.
What my job would be in cases like this, because the law is written to limit so much of what we would otherwise be able to challenge scientifically if we were in the United States under their system. All that I can try and do for things like that is either show that the test wasn't done properly, or I can try and get the samples thrown out of evidence. So show that the police violated my client's rights, and then that the samples shouldn't be admissible. So those are the sort of routes that I take. But I don't think I've ever had to run one of those to completion at trial yet.
See, that whole process that you just talked about, though, for impairment, and that seems laborious. Like it's. If I was a cop, I don't know. Do they? May seem like a silly question, but does the police force throw as much into drunk driving enforcement or impairment enforcement as they? Has that increased or has it decreased?
It depends on the time of year. So summer and Christmas time, you're going to see the big counterattack seasons. And so there's going to be a lot of resources thrown at them. Every Christmas now, they do this thing called Light Up the Province, where they shut down every highway exit. It's all a roadblock. You're going to go out that weekend. You're going to be stopped at a roadblock, guaranteed, if you take any highway. But for the most part, the majority of the year, it's just kind of what they find and maybe some impromptu roadblocks. And part of the problem has been that they've had a real shortage of police officers ever since the pandemic. They lost a lot of people retired, a lot of people went, this is not the job for me. And they never got their staffing levels back up. And so the sacrifice is in the sort of stationary impaired driving enforcement, because the sort of the resource drain that I talked about is going to be happening there. Whereas if you have officers out roving, seeing what crimes they can see, and they happen to catch an impaired driver, that's different. So, yeah.
The other part of that story, the traffic ticket that I got, one of the reasons that I did go to court is that I had a friend tell me that you're an idiot. He won't show up. So you go and he won't show up. And I knew, and he knew I was going to go. So he made sure that he could have been on, I thought maybe it'd been one of his days off. But he did show up. But what I did ask him after that was, who are all these guys here behind me? Dump truck drivers and traffic violations and stuff. Do you defend any of those?
Everything. If you do it wrong in a car, I'll defend it.
Okay.
So
that's always been one of my, a pet peeve of mine. I moved out here in '94 from Manitoba, and dump trucks have kind of been an obsession of mine too, along with no bridge at the Fraser. Like at Highway 99, makes me crazy. There's a couple of things that make me crazy. But dump trucks, because I've been hammered with flying rocks on my windshield so many times, and I'm sorry. I actually did an episode a long time ago called Dump Trucks, because my son is a heavy duty mechanic, and two of his buddies we brought on because I just wanted to know how this works. Why are you guys passing each other? Why aren't you supposed to stay in the right lane?
On some highways, yes. There is a law that's very recent that requires them to stay in the right lane unless they are passing. Because, if you have a dump truck with no load versus a dump truck with load, one's going to go uphill faster than the other.
Yeah.
But we are definitely behind on writing specific laws for the movement of commercial vehicles on the roadways to try and use what limited road space we have. We don't have the infrastructure for the traffic we have.
We don't.
And so we need to control the vehicles that are slower moving and bigger better to try and help the flow of the regular commuter traffic. And I think if there were laws in place that restrained where they could drive more, then I think that would help. But right now, they've only really been focusing on any amendments that deal with safety. Mm-hmm. So speed limiting and things like that.
Because in places like Chicago and even I think in Boston too, the big trucks are not allowed on the road at specific times of the day.
Yeah.
Because they create problems.
Yep.
And we're far beyond that now.
It's too late.
It's too late.
Well, we also have ports too.
Yeah,
right? So
we've got lots of ports. The busiest port here, and it's insane. The dump trucks, there's just a lot of them, and it always seems to me like they're trying to, pass each other, and it's a race, and then one guy's driving it like it's a sports car, in and out of traffic, and they've got what do they call them, puppies on the back of them. I think they call them pups, and it's I see my share of them, and I've never seen. I think I've seen one enforcement, and there used to be a scale.
Yes, they got rid of the scale. There's still a scale out on the Coca-Cola.
Yeah, like that scale on number one highway, but there used to be one at the foot of the Massey Tunnel. But they don't. So now there's no enforcement of load.
Not a lot. They do have, so there is a dedicated policing unit in BC called CVSE, Commercial Vehicle Safety Enforcement. And so they do enforcement blitzes, but just like every other police agency, they're understaffed, and they're dealing not only with sort of the pulling the people over for the defects type cases. They're also dealing with all of the administrative stuff, the paperwork stuff, the people with the fleets, and they go and do these fleet inspections. And so because their time is divided between the sort of paperwork aspect of the job and the, roadside enforcement aspect of the job, they have less of an opportunity to set up CVSE roadblocks. But they do them. I've seen them a couple times in New West, like when you're coming like off Marine Drive in New West. Yeah. They'll be set up there often doing them.
Yeah. And there is, there seems to be no, like, where they can go to, there's no rules. Like, in my mind, like, it's just like our road, like, it's brutal. Like, it really is. Like, when you're on West 70th trying to get onto Oak Street, and there's like 6 dump trucks and, 6 tractor trailers with full loads, all trying to turn right at the same time. And at least I've got so many great traffic stories here. Like when you try to access Oak Street, what they used to do is they would put motorcycle cops at all the feeders onto Oak Street. So
they
people that's right. And it was like, cop day, and
that was back when VPD actually had like a really robust traffic unit.
Yeah.
They've been decimated.
Then what they did is they just shut it off. You can't get onto Oak Street, and you've got to go up to West 70th, and then it's really, and it's the only way to get across. Like you come off Marine and you go, and that's just, it's absolute insanity. I know I'm moving my hands here too much. It's giving me the motion because I'm talking with my hands. But what rights do you have when you're driving a vehicle and you're pulled over? What rights do you have?
You don't have a lot of rights. We consider in Canada driving to be a highly regulated activity with a huge safety risk associated with it and a diminished degree of privacy. So you do have the right to not answer any questions other than the ones that you're required to answer to identify yourself and identify the owner. You have the right to not have your vehicle searched, subject to the circumstances in which it can be searched. Like if it's being impounded, they can do an inventory search. But if a police officer pulls you over and says, get out of your car, you have to get out of your car. But if they say, I'm going to search your car, then you have the right to refuse that unless they have some other lawful basis for the search. So it's mostly like asterisks on all of your rights.
So if you refuse
to let them search it and they had the right to search it, they'd probably just stick you in handcuffs, put you in the back of the police car and go search it anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not physically restraining them from doing it.
They're the king of the hill.
Basically.
Do whatever.
I mean, in a traffic stop, yeah.
Yeah. You pretty much don't have and I've been, I hold the dubious distinction too of when in Manitoba, when they put the seatbelt law in, this is many, many years ago, I was one of those guys that refused to wear a seatbelt.
Yep.
An idiot. Okay. And I got 2 seatbelt tickets in the same day within 2 hours.
Well, did that make you wear your seatbelt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That did. I showed them. I really showed them.
You showed them your money.
Yeah, I did.
When you paid those tickets.
That's right. And now, like and the other thing too that comes up here, I thought you had to wear a helmet when you rode a motorized, like a 2-wheeled vehicle that was motorized. Is that not a law?
No, it is. You have to wear a helmet if you're riding any of those like e-scooters or e-bikes.
That doesn't happen.
Nobody ever wears them. No, and those get me fired up here. Those are the things that have the worst safety record right now. There's been so many children, like the numbers every month of children going to children's hospitals with injuries from e-bikes and e-scooters is huge and growing. There's absolutely no enforcement of the fact that people under 16 or under 14, as the case may be, are riding them. There's people riding them on the road in places they're not supposed to ride them, or on the sidewalk in places they're not supposed to ride them. You have the absence of any protections in terms of forcing people to wear helmets. And because we don't even have the police resources to do the enforcement of the roads before all of this technology, this is falling by the wayside. And tragically, earlier this month, there was somebody who was killed in an accident on an e-scooter, wasn't wearing a helmet.
Believe that?
In Vancouver.
I can believe that.
Yeah.
Those things go fast.
Yeah, they can go like 50 kilometers an hour. They're supposed to only go 32.
They take the governor off or whatever. They figure out how to go faster.
Yeah.
So that leads me to another question, which is kind of like a pet peeve of mine here. If I accidentally hit one of those people, okay, and they can be in my blind spot, they can be on the sidewalk in one moment, and then the next moment they're in the bike lane, or the next moment they're behind me. I can lose sight, and I'm turning right, and I can't. And I have the thing on my vehicle that will light up if I'm paying real close attention. If I turn into is that my fault?
Well, I mean, fault is a difficult thing. And so fault, when you're talking in the insurance context versus the criminal or quasi-criminal liability context, is different. So if you did not yield the right of way to a vulnerable road user who had the right of way, then that would be your fault in that you could get a ticket for that. Would you be assessed at fault in the insurance context? Probably, but there might be some apportionment of fault depending on where the rider was and what they could see that you were doing. And
does that rider have any insurance?
No. They're not required to have a license, have insurance to prove any competence or any knowledge of the road rules, yet they're expected to follow them.
Are we insane?
Probably. I think our motor vehicle laws in British Columbia are always playing catch up to the state of the world. We're never trying to get ahead of it. We're never thinking about what's coming and regulating in advance. We're just catching up to what's out there and dealing with the biggest problems as they come. And so we've ended up with this terrible Motor Vehicle Act that doesn't actually reflect the state of what people are doing in their vehicles and on other devices on the roadway as it is today.
Does government give a shit? Like, do our politicians give a shit about, like, I guess they would if they had a child that was injured or, God forbid, killed. But I don't, I never see statistics like that, but I have to think that it happens because there's so many of those scooters and I call them motorcycles. They're not like, and it frustrates the hell out of me because I know, I know if I was ever riding one of them, I'd probably get ticketed for something. I'm serious. But so they're not wearing a helmet. Mm-hmm. There's no age limit, right?
Well, there is in the law. Yeah.
What
for the e-scooters, 16.
16.
Yeah.
Well, that's certainly not happening.
Following.
Nobody follows that. I can tell you that for a fact.
No. There was a parent recently in North Vancouver who was ticketed. This was in the news. Their child under the age of 16 took an e-scooter and was riding it around with the parents' permission and hit somebody's car, caused some damage, and got seriously injured. The child did. And the North Vancouver RCMP issued a ticket to the parent for permitting a person under the age of 16 to operate an e-scooter.
Really?
Yeah. So, hopefully she learns from that. One would hope that, she'd learn more from her child being in the hospital. But
see, the thing is that is, I'm sure this is, everyone has an issue with this.
Oh, I haven't met a person these days who's loving the ubiquitousness of e-scooters and e-bikes on the road. There's not a person out there who thinks that this is a great idea the way we're currently doing it and that it doesn't need serious change. Yeah,
it's asinine. And I don't know what constitutes a vehicle. like if you're saying that we have electric cars, so we have electric like.
So there's different definitions. So a vehicle and a motor vehicle are different. A motor vehicle is something that is not driven by self-propulsion, whereas a vehicle is something that can be self-propelled. And then you also have a conveyance for the criminal code purposes, for criminal law, which could be a plane, a train, any type of watercraft, including like a pool noodle, technically, as well as your regular cars, but they have to be self-propelled. So you get into these areas where the law is really unclear because you have like an electric skateboard, for example, would constitute a motor vehicle under the BC Motor Vehicle Act. It would require you to have a license and insurance, which you can't purchase for it because ICBC, the only people who can sell that insurance, doesn't create a product for it. At the same time, you have an e-scooter, which is technically a motor vehicle also under the BC Motor Vehicle Act, but doesn't require a license or insurance because it's captured by a pilot project, and they've written a law that says that if it's being used within the scope of the pilot project, it's not a motor vehicle, it's just a vehicle or a personal mobility device like an electric wheelchair, which isn't a motor vehicle. Even though an electric wheelchair, it's so confusing. It is incredibly confusing. Like if you were trying to explain it, you'd end up looking like one of those people with those conspiracy theory boards with red strings everywhere to try and explain how something can be in the law, both a vehicle and not a vehicle, and a motor vehicle and not a motor vehicle, all at the same time.
So there is no, even if you, okay, so I'm a parent. Let's just say I'm a parent here, and I have a 14-year-old. And they've got like one of those scooters that goes like 50 kilometers an hour.
Better take it away from them because they're not supposed to have it.
They're not supposed to have it.
No.
So what's the fine, or what do you? Is it a massive deterrent?
No, it's not.
It's not.
Like it's not going to be more than $368. It's probably $109. I would bet.
It's virtually nothing.
Yes.
So there's no repercussions to, like, there's no.
You don't get points on your driving record. You pay the fine, right? And what are the chances that you as a parent are going to be caught if you let your kid do it? And also, like, honestly, the kids that are doing them are ages 12 to 15 when they're not allowed to do it. Those aren't the age range known for listening to everything their parents say all the time.
So that's correct. And you couldn't even get insurance if you wanted to.
Correct.
So if they're riding this thing, and they hit something. So this issue that you said in North Van, liability lies, okay, they charge the parent, right?
Yep. So the parent faces some quasi-criminal or regulatory liability for the ticket. For the insurance purposes, the child will probably be found at fault for the accident, although we don't know all the details about it.
And ICBC would be involved because it's the damaging of the vehicle.
Yeah. ICBC gets involved, but nobody can sue because, remember, in BC,
no fault.
You can't sue, so it's no fault. So even though ICBC makes a determination of fault really doesn't matter. It's just so simple, isn't it?
It's absolutely, it's insane.
Yes.
So are there any provinces in Canada that have addressed this?
I think Ontario's done more than we have, but everybody's kind of just figuring it out as the technology is developing faster than the law. And these devices are getting more powerful and more complicated and can do more things. And it's very hard for legislatures to keep up because what they end up having to do is write a new law and then debate it. And then it goes through that whole process. And that takes, from the day they table a bill to the day the bill becomes law, it can be 6 months typically. So you're not getting, by the time 6 months have passed, there's a whole host of new problems.
Well, I'll speak. Yesterday, when we were just driving in South Surrey, there was a guy in the bike lane. Trish, it looked like he was riding a box. It looked like a filing cabinet with wheels on it, and it had handles. And he was going probably, 30 kilometers an hour in the bike lane, going against traffic without a helmet.
Oh, lovely.
And it's a busy street, like it's a busy road. And I just look and go, okay.
And it's the cyclist doesn't have to buy insurance, but if the cyclist gets in an accident, and injures themselves. Some vehicle hits them, or they cause an accident because they're going against traffic when they shouldn't be, and not wearing a helmet when they shouldn't be. ICBC is going to pay out that cyclist's injuries and, cover the medical treatment and things like that, as long as a car was involved. And that's going to come from you and I as ratepayers on our vehicles.
Okay, next question. On these e-scooters and powered skateboards and stuff, can you get an impaired?
Yes and no. So yes.
That's not ambiguous.
I know. No, it's not confusing at all. So in the BC Motor Vehicle Act, if it's a motor vehicle, yes. So if you're using an e-scooter, and I actually argued a case like this a little while ago, if you're using an e-scooter in a city where it's part of the pilot projects, which is, there's I think 15 municipalities that have the pilot project running, then you cannot get an immediate roadside prohibition because it's not considered a motor vehicle. But if you were using it in a different municipality, you could. And then criminally, because it's not designed to be self-propelled, you could be charged criminally, although I can't imagine anybody would ever face criminal prosecution for it, because we do something called charge approval, where Crown Counsel will look at the case and go, is it in the public interest to prosecute this? In theory, and it has happened, under the criminal code, you can be charged with impaired operation of a conveyance by using an electric wheelchair. It's never going to happen because it's bad public policy, except one instance, which I think was particularly
I see a
egregious.
lot of that. I see a lot of those electric wheelchairs in the bike lane.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's probably easier than navigating around people on signs and stuff on the sidewalk.
And, okay, this is another silly question. Are those people that are riding those scooters, are they obligated to stop at a stop sign?
Yes.
Never see that.
Nope. Same with cyclists.
Yeah.
Obligated to wear a helmet, obligated to stop at a stop sign. There's a provision of the Motor Vehicle Act that says that for all of these devices, bikes and e-bikes and e-scooters, they have to follow all the rules of the road the same that a car would, with a few specific exceptions. So they can't be on their phone, they can't have two headphones in, they can't fail to stop at a stop sign, they still have to yield the same way you and I do at a four-way stop. They're not supposed to be passing on the right, but they do. They're supposed to ride as far right as practicable, but they take up the whole lane.
And I can get fined for not giving them enough space too,
Yes.
right?
Yes. So there's the contradictory laws of the vulnerable road user law, which says you as a car driver have to give space to like 1.5 meters to the vulnerable road users. So the cyclist, the wheelchair, the pedestrian,
What if they're,
etc.
see, this is where it's really nuanced, because they can be hugging that the bike lane. And if I actually legally, I'd be in the other lane facing oncoming traffic.
And they did think about that, and they did write a provision that says that you don't have to comply with the not crossing a solid line or the center line if you are giving a vulnerable road user space, provided it's safe, right? Like if obviously there's oncoming traffic, then you're just going to have to drive real slow.
So all of this stuff here, it's confusing at the very least. Enforcement is a completely different animal.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not even in the game for enforcement. We can't even enforce helmets.
Correct.
Like there's no, and I assume, could they pass legislation saying that anybody that's riding one of these things has to have some sort of license, some kind?
Yeah, absolutely. They could make you it would be so easy. They could make you take an online class. They've got it now set up where you can get your your learner's license, by taking the exam online. So they could easily do that for these, pass an online competency course, get a little card, charge them $25 or some very nominal fee to do it, so that to facilitate the cost of setting it up and administering it. But at least then you would know that people know the rules. Because I think most of the time, I talk to a lot of cyclists who don't like me.
I can imagine.
And they're always telling me things that are not the law, because they don't know the law, because nobody tells you what the law is as a cyclist, and nobody forces you to demonstrate that you know it.
Are you, this is a personal question too, about cyclists. Are they allowed to ride in packs?
No, they're not supposed to ride two abreast or anything like that. Single file.
But they can ride like a motorcycle gang down the
I mean, as long as there's single file.
Single
yes.
file.
Yes.
Okay. And because I've never seen that, I'll call it a daisy chain, of them going down the road and stopping at a stop sign. It never happens.
No, there's a 4-way stop near my office, which is on a bike route, and I can see outside my window every day. Multiple cyclists go, one after the other, blowing through the stop sign. It's very dangerous.
It's such a rare sighting that when we went for a walk yesterday, somebody actually stopped for us to cross the street, which was, I was like, bravo. Yeah. Like, I've never seen that before, but people, I don't, and I wonder, does anybody care? Like, does any, like, it seems to me.
I care.
I know you do, and it's your area of expertise. Traffic law and drug testing, breathalyzers, all those kinds of things. But
politically, no. Nobody cares. You're not winning votes by being harsher on cyclists. The cyclist lobby is very vocal. So politicians are not going to do anything that makes it harder for cyclists, because that's only going to politically backfire. And it's also, then you get the environmental side too, getting mad at you because it's a greener alternative. So
it's but it's fine. All those cars idling trying to get through the tunnel for an hour and a half.
It's not a political win. What is a political win is anything you can do that is aimed at making it easier to convict people or punish people for drunk driving. So that's why we're seeing the majority of the amendments in our criminal law and our Motor Vehicle Act aimed at our impaired driving, creating these new, easier programs, eliminating defenses, things like that. They're aimed at impaired driving because, as you said at the outset, everybody can agree that impaired driving is bad. So if you say we're doing more to save people from dying at the hands of an impaired driver, everybody goes, great. And nobody's going to be the lone person, shouting at the politician going, actually, drunk driving's not so bad. Not only because they'd be wrong, but because that's not, you're not going to garner the public sympathy. So they're only, politicians are motivated by what's politically expedient. And it's not politically expedient to create better laws around cyclists and create more of an enforcement scheme, or to create more obligations to demonstrate competency or minor insurance that you have to carry. It is politically expedient to crack down on cars and then point at the number of accidents and deaths and say, people are dying, we're saving lives. Also, your insurance rates are going up every time there's an accident. So you'll save money if we punish drivers.
Yeah, so now you've clarified that the simple fact is there are rules, but nobody abides by them. Yes. It's a fallacy.
It's a free-for-all.
It's a free-for-all. It's whatever you can get away with. Like, is there a limit to like e-bikes? Is there a limit to like, there's actual motorcycles that are electric now.
Yes. So there are limits. In fact, for something to qualify as an e-bike where you don't have to have a license or insurance, it's really, really strict. There's rules on the wheel diameter. They have to have pedals. It has to be assisted by the pedaling rather than the motor kicking everything off. They have to be governed for speed at 32 kilometers per hour. And there's a BC Court of Appeal case where somebody was driving one of those motorbike things. It was called a Motorino scooter. And it was the weight of the thing was so heavy. The Court of Appeal was like, this is clearly not an e-bike. If you can't pick it up as you lay it down, it's a motorcycle. It's not a car, and it's not a bicycle. So you have to look at it like, is this thing like a bike with some help for the rider by the engine, or is it not
motorized? It's got an electric motor. I see a lot of just the electric motor. There's no pedals on it. They're just, it's a scooter.
And again,
it's like a Vespa, small Vespa.
There are police like to enforce that law because it's easy. It's very clear cut for them. But the resources to do it, again, it's a resource issue.
Resources.
And the more available they become, the cheaper they become, the more there are out there, and the fewer, times you have to pull somebody over and actually ticket them for it.
See, it's baffling. Now, I have in my notes here that Section 1, reasonable limits how right shift when you're driving, and briefly the notwithstanding clause. I made a note of that.
Yeah.
Explain that.
So we've talked about kind of how you don't have any rights when you're pulled over. And the reason that you don't have any rights is not because the things they do, like breath testing, is unconstitutional. It's not because you shouldn't have the right to contact a lawyer when you've been detained and asked to do a breath test before you provide a sample. All of those things have been found to be unconstitutional. But Section 1 of the Charter permits in a free and democratic society, reasonable limits on your rights as long as they're demonstrably justifiable. So the courts have said the interest in removing impaired drivers from the road, the need to ensure that people who are pulled over for these types of investigations are dealt with quickly and on their way, so that we're not inconvenience people. We're going to limit your rights. So that's why we don't have many rights, is mostly because our rights do exist, but they're justifiably limited because of the pressing need for road safety.
So you basically really don't. The officer that's pulling you over has got all the power, really. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's set up that way.
You can't. It's simple. Like, I use my example of making an argument that I was actually going for breath mints, and maybe I guess that's against the law.
It's not against the law to go for breath mints, unless, I mean, theoretically you could get a ticket for driving without due care and detention, but it would be difficult to prosecute that. But your problem there, if you want my legal opinion,
sure,
is you said something. I would have just kept my mouth shut.
Yeah.
Because the biggest power move you have when you're pulled over by the police is silence. Everybody answers questions. Honestly, I read hundreds of police reports every month, and the number of people who, when they're asked whether they had anything to drink or where they're going or where they're coming from or how fast do you think you were going, they all answer it. The biggest power move you have is silence, because 9 times out of 10, the police officer isn't entirely sure what they saw.
Guessing.
They don't know, or they're looking for grounds, and you're giving it to them when you talk. Whereas if you're quiet, you're not.
That's a good point. Not that I'm ever pulled over, but I'm going to have to remember that. Because it immediately, in my speeding tickets, I've had such bad luck driving through Saskatchewan, getting ticketed by the same RCMP officer driving through the same town. He's like, "Didn't you learn?" No, I didn't, because I blinked my eyes and I missed this town. I don't know.
See? No, I didn't. There, you
that's
just admitted
right.
guilt.
I admitted guilt. I know, that's bad. That's really bad. So we've covered off what counts. We've talked a little bit about what counts as a motor vehicle. I want to get into like current issues that you're dealing with. I know that you're on a panel with CBC. You do some, you're a public figure, and you're on social media, which is kind of cool. It is, because I think that's you're embracing it.
Well, I'm trying. I care about legal education, in part because I see, the consequences of when people don't know their rights, whether it is that they, end up in trouble that maybe they would have avoided, or when people are injured or hurt because people don't understand the laws. And so I think, empowering people with knowledge about what their rights are, what their obligations are, is the best way to prevent people from finding themselves on the wrong side of a courtroom.
So what issues, like, obviously we touched on the e-bike stuff. We talked, and we're all against the impaired driving, drunk driving. Like it used to be. So you're saying in 2010 they changed the law here in British Columbia for drunk driving, because there used to be when you, and not admitting to anything here, but when you had an impaired charge, there was 2 charges that were put against you. Yep. Right, and then one stuck.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah. So being impaired and being over the legal limit. Yeah. Because if you're impaired, typically they're going to prosecute that based on the way you're moving, talking, driving. And if you're driving perfectly, moving perfectly, but you blow 220.
Yeah. You're in
you did something wrong.
Yeah. So what, aside from what we talked about, what things that, what should we be paying attention to that we're not paying attention to?
I think in criminal law generally, there is a trend towards using sort of public outcry as a justification to take people's rights away. We're seeing tons of new criminal law reform that has passed, right? The whole revolving door bail discussion that's created more reverse onuses in bail. People got mad about the Supreme Court of Canada finding a sentence for child porn offenses unconstitutional, and now we got rid of house arrest for numerous offenses, and we have cases that are being thrown out for unreasonable delay. And so the government passed legislation to say you can't throw a case out for unreasonable delay unless you consider all these other things first, and you have to deduct all of this time.
So we have like child porn cases being thrown.
There were, yes.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Supreme Court of Canada in 2016 essentially created a hard ceiling that if your case took more than 18 months in provincial court or 30 months in superior court, then it would be presumed that you were not tried within a reasonable time, and the case would be thrown out unless the Crown could justify why the case took markedly longer than it should have. So if there was unusual circumstances that happened, like the pandemic, for example, or, the accused was playing games, firing their lawyer on the day of trial multiple times, then, that would be deducted. But even still, cases were being thrown out, and people got angry about that. They didn't understand that the vast majority of cases are being prosecuted in a reasonable time. They don't understand that the government isn't paying for enough courtrooms or prosecutors or judges to actually hear all of the cases that we have, that we don't have a robustly funded legal aid system, so it's not attractive to go into criminal defense and be paid legal aid rates, that a ton of people don't qualify for legal aid because there's this missing middle chunk of people. So you have all of these systemic problems that could be corrected if the government actually cared, but instead they relied on the public outrage to just limit the rights of people facing a criminal trial and say, well, now you can't have this remedy that you're entitled to, or the Supreme Court of Canada has already said there's no other remedy that would suit unreasonable delay. You can't have the remedy. You have to have a lesser remedy, and any time that you use to actually argue violations of your rights is also going to be deducted from that, even though that's how you defend a criminal case. It's this constant, they take the outrage and the politicians prey on the lack of knowledge that people have. And then they use that to write bad law that does bad things for people's rights. And nobody's upset about it until they find themselves caught by it. And then they go, how could this have happened?
So that's the message you're trying to get out.
Yeah.
That's
be educated.
Be educated. Understand
about your rights in the system.
Understand what's going on. And the thing, this is the thing. Like I'm in the newspaper business. That's what I do. We're it's going down. There's no question about it. I've been in it for a long time. But I want to know, like, how does an everyday person, male or female, how do they become more educated? Okay, they follow you. They can follow you on social media. If you have an Instagram account. What's your Instagram?
Kyla Lee Lawyer, Instagram, TikTok.
Yeah, I think that's how I reached out to you. But nobody cares about things until they affect them personally. Nobody. Mm-hmm. And I sometimes feel like, I don't know if you're a fan of The Simpsons, but when Homer works in that nuclear power plant and they hire a guy that's really smart, and he figures out that Homer's not like crazy. Yeah. He doesn't know what he's doing, and he drives himself into the grave because he's like, Jesus, I feel sometimes like that guy.
Yeah.
Like, are you not paying attention to what's happening here? But nobody, and you're right, politically it's outrage. Yeah. It's whatever we're outraged about. There's no set policy for anything. It's just, when we get outraged, something stops. If we don't say anything, it just slowly gets.
You probably remember, because you, like me, are old enough to remember Vic Taves.
Yes, yeah.
So they passed all of these laws that brought in these mandatory minimums that have been systematically struck down by the Supreme Court of Canada since, back under the Harper government. Vic Taves, when they tabled that bill, said, if you're not with us, you're with the child pornographers. Mm-hmm. And that's like, and that line got repeated and repeated and repeated, but it's really like we've shifted back to that, but under a liberal government. Yeah. Where it's, people are so uneducated about the system. There's all this built up, like, pent up leftover outrage from the pandemic too, about, people have feelings about the rights in the pandemic and things like that, and influences from down south, and so much has gone into it that we're now, I think, the least educated I think we've seen the population be in my lifetime about how our justice system actually works. And that's super great for politicians, because they can push through things that they can say, these are political wins for us, when they're actually losses, not just ultimately politically when they get struck down, but also losses to you and I and the average citizen.
Is the thing that and I use the term lightly, and it's openly, it is do people does the younger generation, do they understand what's going on, or do they not really? Once again, until it affects them, they don't give a shit. And then when it does affect them, then all of a sudden it's woe is me, and then you start paying attention. But by that time, it's too late.
Yes. Yeah, that's I think universal.
Universal,
and defies the generational boundaries.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things about about our whole experience with COVID was, and this is me personally, I almost kind of went nuts because the earth stopped turning for me for a little bit.
Oh, I loved it.
It was insanity, and it actually enticed us to cut the cable. Like, we stopped cable TV because I got tired of coming home and seeing CNN on the big screen with the body count. Going, okay, well, this is insane. What are we doing?
I loved being at home with my dog all day. It was great.
Yeah. Well, we kind of dog you got?
A little schnauzer.
Nice. Yeah. We got two.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we got a golden retriever and a flat coat retriever, Lucy and Jojo.
Nice.
Oh yeah, we're dog people too, and enjoy being home with them. But what shocked me about COVID, and we should attempt to wrap things up here, but what shocked me about COVID was how easily we were led. Like, it was. I remember walking down the street, and my neighbor about 6 houses down was out on his front porch at about 6 o'clock with a pot and a wooden spoon, banging it. And I'm walking the dogs, and I just look at him and go, "What do you?" And our eyes met, and he was like, "Yeah, this is stupid. What are we doing here? Like, what are we doing here?" And we were, it was very interesting and kind of, I don't know, surreal to see how we were led down a path with so little knowledge, and we all kind of gravitated behind this movement. And then there was some pushback, and when the pushback happened, they were immediately ostracized for questioning anything.
I mean, I think in that situation, I like to look at that as a positive.
Okay.
People were coming together. We were supporting the people who we knew were most at risk, right? You don't need data to tell you that the healthcare workers are the most at risk in a health pandemic. And we, I think we just all felt like this sense of common goal. Like in my work, right? I'm dealing with all my day is conflict, right? It's conflict between the police and my clients, conflict between me and a prosecutor, right? And there was so much less of that. There was this better sense of like, we actually are all still just fighting to survive. We're trying to get home at the end of the day. And I thought that at least in the legal profession, it had a net positive impact on sort of the relations between all the sides.
That's interesting. It's interesting because I look at, I looked at that situation, and obviously the healthcare workers, but the elderly were at risk too, and we didn't really pay much attention to it until it became a crisis. And we had ample opportunity to do that. But, looking at that, I never thought, I really didn't think that something like that could happen. That was for me. It was like, oh, Jesus, like walking down the street and seeing somebody come towards me and have my dogs, and then they cross the street because they don't want to come close to me. That was, and I remember walking down the street, and there was an elderly person in a wheelchair, and they wanted to pet my dog so bad. And I was like, come pet the dogs. Like, this is not like, I didn't realize, and this is, like, I used to travel a lot, and I got sucked into, talking to the Canadian government, trying to figure out how I could get back into the country if I didn't have I had to get another shot. I had like all kinds of stuff.
I took limos across the border more than once because I had to travel for work.
It was insane.
It was silly.
It was just as absolute insanity.
It makes no sense that I can fly to the Seattle airport and take a limo from Seattle to my front door and do the regular thing. But if I flew to Vancouver, then I have to stay in a hotel for 3 days. But there's literally no difference.
Yeah, it was nonsensical. It was nonsensical. Well, listen, Kyla, I'd like to thank you so much for coming and spending some time here with us. You did come to my attention in that what you're trying to do is get information out to the public, which is a good thing, because being more educated, it's a good thing.
Yeah,
It
education
really
is
is.
empowerment.
It's empowerment. It totally is. And I've learned stuff talking to you, because as obviously you know, I have a pet peeve with a few issues here, and there, and the more we discuss, the more we get that information out there. And to be honest with you, I think you're one of the only lawyers doing that. There might be a few that I'm unaware of, but you came on my radar, and I appreciate this is the long-winded way of saying I appreciate what you're doing.
Well, thank you.
Because we need to learn. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to address these things that we talked about. And we want to prevent deaths. We don't want kids being hurt. Nobody wants that.
No.
We have enough issues, and these things here that we've talked about, there is a solution. There's a path towards.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope there is.
Yeah. So once again, shout out your Instagram.
Kyla Lee Lawyer.
Okay. Website. Do you have a YouTube channel?
Kyla Lee Lawyer on YouTube. And,
Perfect.
Yeah, KylaLee.ca.
Well, thank you so much for coming aboard the ship.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate it. And I hope we brought a little wit and we brought a lot of wisdom to the table. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You may be asking yourself, what's any of this got to do with me? Absolutely nothing. Until next time.